All right. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Joseph Wozniak. I'm with the International Trade Center in Geneva, Switzerland. I'm with my colleague, Madison Wilcox, as well, who's on our team. And we also have colleagues from DG Trade in Brussels, Fabio De Franceschi. Fabio, I don't know if you would like just to say a few words before we kick off the webinar today.
Yes, well, welcome everyone and good afternoon. I'm Fabio De Franceschi, here in grey Brussels from the grey buildings on the European Commission. And welcome to this webinar for the first edition of the EU Cities for Fair and Ethical Trade Award. It's an important initiative for our trade policy. It's something that the Commissioner has wanted to work on for a long time. It is something that has been in the requests and desires of other European institutions and stakeholders. So we're very happy to have launched the application process 7th of December last year. And of course, I mean, there is still time to apply. Applications will close on the 13th of April, but I'm sure there are many questions you want to ask about the application and the evaluation criteria and other aspects of the world. We are totally open. So thanks for having registered and feel free to shoot.
Great. So thanks very much, Fabio. So what we'll do, we have the official time for the webinar this afternoon is 1.5 hours, which would go until approximately 4 o'clock, or sorry, 3:30, no, 4 o'clock actually, right? 4 o'clock Central European time. So what we'll do now is we'll have a half hour or so of presentation where I'll go over the basic information on the EU Cities for Fair and Ethical Trade Award, the timetable, and the overall, let's say, criteria that we are putting in place. And then we'll, after that half-hour presentation or so, we'll then open it up for questions and answers by all participants who are here at the webinar today. So what I'll do right now is I will start off with the presentation. Always does this. Okay, there we go. Sorry about that. So in terms of the award, why an award for fair and ethical trade? So basically, this is really to support the European Commission DG Trade policy, the Trade for All communication, which was launched by Commissioner Malmström at the end of 2016. The idea here is to increase the awareness of the overall EU public and to bolster, if you will, the role of EU local and public authorities regarding the promotion of fair and ethical trade policies and products, and also to disseminate good practices and provide incentives for the uptake of various fair and ethical trade products and policies in local communities, local authorities in the European Union. So it's really fundamental to the Trade for All communication, the Trade for All strategy that has been developed by DG Trade. Also, we're looking to really understand the way that consumers are using sustainable sourcing, sustainable products to really understand, to really further, if you will, development in emerging market economies, okay? And also how companies, whether they're international corporations or they're regional or local companies, are also implementing these types of policies in their operations. We're also looking at various mechanisms like sustainability standards. These are codes of conduct. These are public-facing standards that are on a product, for example, like fair trade chocolate or UTZ cocoa, for example, to recognize these types of instruments as ways to improve to improve sustainability at the upstream level, at the farmer level, but also then to increase the awareness of consumers as to the issues related to sustainability and the opportunities that are there for producers that are actually engaging in fair and ethical. When we look at this word fair and ethical, what do we mean by that? What we mean is more or less anything that we would consider sustainable. So environmental sustainability, social and labor sustainability, economic sustainability, improving the overall conditions of production and processing at the origin level in an emerging market or a developing country. So there's a various let's say, wide spectrum of terminology and definitions. And so fair and ethical, in our case, would mean, let's say, the larger view of sustainability. So environmental, social, and economic. So it's the way to, I would say, to look at it. Really, with the ultimate goal here is to contribute toward the awareness and the promotion of developing more sustainable trade opportunities for small producers who are exporting to the European Union. That's really a way that we're trying to get this whole issue of sustainable trade and sustainable production into a more of a mainstream understanding at the European Union level. So, and why is an award an important part of that? Because based on our work, we know that there's a lack of information about the various, let's say, levels of access to sustainable trade and sustainable opportunities by producers and processors in the developing world. And also, there's also a lack of information in many cases from the consumer level. So we're really trying to bridge that gap and to provide more of an understanding of the link between trade and development and the challenges that are posed, if you will, by trading sustainably. So it's really, that's the core rationale. Why is ITC, the International Trade Center, involved? So the International Trade Center, we're a joint WTO UN organization. We're based here in Geneva, Switzerland, and our mission is really to foster sustainable and inclusive growth through trade. So we work directly with exporters, with processors, with producers in emerging markets to help them trade, export in a sustainable way, economically, environmentally, and socially. And that's why we're partnering with DG Trade on this important initiative. So it's our role as a UN and neutral agency to actually implement this award. And we've been working in the sustainable trade field for many years, for over 10 years now. And so we have a level of experience and understanding that allow us to intervene and work in this space in a way that is both neutral, but also leveraging our networks, our contacts, and indeed our technical knowledge. So the main features of the award, basically, these are the features, the design that we have developed over the past several months, starting at the beginning of last year, at the beginning of 2017. So basically, the award will be issued in 2018, but it will be for the Fair and Ethical Trade City of 2019. So it'll be forward-looking. And so the ceremony will take place in June of this year in Brussels, but with the forward-looking aspect of having the award be a Fair and Ethical Trade City of 2019. There will be one overall award winner, but there'll be a range of special mentions. So there'll be subcategories such as city with the best procurement policy or sustainable public procurement policy, most innovative approach toward sustainability by a city, or most innovative approach toward engaging with local countries in the developing world vis-a-vis fair and ethical trade policies and exchanges. And also maybe a best small city, should a city win with a certain level of inhabitants, for example. So there are various different types of special mentions that we would be considering through the application process. In terms of the evaluation criteria, there are three main criteria that we're going to be looking at. The first is the policy framework that is adopted or implemented by the city. So that could be their strategy, their leadership, their vision, their relevant internal structures, their policy frameworks that deal with fair and ethical trade, that deal with sustainability. This is really a policy level framework that a city would have in place. The second is what are different practices that we can see, that we can observe, that are actually going on now. These could be actual projects, so exchanges or other types of interactions with local entities in the developing world. So projects, development projects with third country partners, sustainable public procurement policies. So a certain percentage of the city's budget is allocated toward sustainable procurement or sustainable purchases of institutional products, whether it's uniforms, whether it's coffee, whether it's timber, wood products, whatever the case may be. And then lastly, multi-stakeholder activities. So initiatives that are within the city ecosystem. And so what I mean by that is basically beyond, if you will, the city hall, beyond the public sector of that city, the overall, let's say, community and civil society or non-governmental organizations, different groups that are convened with the support, if you will, and encouragement of the city to engage in fair and ethical trade or sustainable type activities that are engaging with a developing country or emerging market context. So we're looking at more or less not only the public space, but the public sector space or the municipal space, but also the overall, let's say, societal space of the residents of the city. What are they doing, for example? And then we look at also finally overlying or underlying this whole, let's say, evaluation criteria is the context. So again, you know, we're looking at the overall context in terms of, even if it's a smaller size city, not a nation's capital, for example, but a smaller size city, we're also looking to say, what is the context? So even if it's a smaller type city, we can take into consideration ideas or projects or programs or multi-stakeholder activities that they have in place, which even though maybe let's say less of a scale than a capital city, would still obviously be important and be something which we could look at replicating down the road in terms of future awards or best practices that we can communicate in the activities that go on beyond, if you will, the award ceremony this coming June. And then also I should note, and we'll go over this in a few minutes, is the Living Book, which we have developed in conjunction with our technical working group and our governance committee that we have established for this project, is online on our website, which I'll go over in a few minutes. But this Living Book provides you, the city, with ideas and suggestions and contexts that would help you, if you will, when you complete your application. So we've provided as best as we can case studies and other examples that put a little of an example or a context to the evaluation criteria that I just outlined, and that is the Living Book, and we'll go over that where you can find that in a few minutes. So the criteria for the award. So these are important. The criteria are also provided on our website. So all this information that I'm going over now verbally is provided in written printed form, and it's all available on our website. But basically, I just wanted to go over these now for the sake of the webinar. So basically, the award is open to all cities in EU member states with the official submission by the local authority. So the mayoral declaration from the municipality or the person or entity responsible for that city. Basically, other organizations like NGOs or civil society organizations can apply, but they have to have the endorsement of that mayoral representation in their application packet, and that type of mayoral declaration is also provided in the application pack, so it's all there for you. So it's not just the city itself that can apply, but also civil society organizations in the various cities with the approval, if you will, or endorsement of the mayor and municipality. The idea here is to focus the award in relationship to trade between an EU city and a third country outside of the European Union. And here we mean in most cases a developing or emerging market country where the issues of sustainable production, the environmental, the social issues are most acute. So really we're looking at this as an external type view, if you will. So how is the city engaging with a third country outside of the European Union area? And when we mean a city, that is exactly what our definition is. It's really an urban area. It's not a large metropolitan area such as Métropole Paris, for example, that includes various other smaller cities that comprise the metropolitan area. We're looking really at the city itself. So the Ville de Paris in the French example. So it has to be that local, if you will, entity. Also, we are looking at a minimum threshold of 20,000 inhabitants. So that means that cities that are above 20,000 inhabitants are able to apply, not below. And that threshold has been established. The award cycle is planned to take place every other year. So basically, we will have the award being issued this coming June 2018, for a city, for a fair and ethical city of 2019, which means the process will repeat itself in 2020, and then there will be the second, let's say, city, a fair and ethical trade city in 2021. So every other year. And award winners from prior years will be able to apply again after the first initial period, which means that the winner in 2018 will not be able to apply for the award in 2020, but thereafter. The award procedure, in terms of the process from today and moving out into the future, is the following: is that right now the application process is open. So the process has been open, as Fabio mentioned, since December 7th. Actually, can someone mute their microphone from receiving feedback? Thanks. So the application period started on the 7th of December, and it's open through the 13th of April. So there is still time to apply. Basically, the application process is relatively straightforward, and we'll go over that in a few moments when we give you a brief tour of the website. And again, when you know, I need to emphasize that in terms of the criteria for the application, we're looking here for we value both the public sector intervention at the city level, but also, if you will, the private sector or the NGO civil society engagement in terms of the application. And right now we're in the process of outreach, communications of the award, holding these types of webinars for interested cities. Then we have the pre-selection process, which follows the closure of the applications on the 13th of April. The evaluation committee, we are in the process now of selecting that group. They will check against compliance to make sure that the application is valid based on our compliance criteria, which I also went over. And then they will establish a long list of cities, and then basically from that long list, a short list of possible winners and honorable special mentions, as I discussed. Finally, a smaller jury that was nominated by the European Commission and ITC will make the final decision of the award winner and the special mentions. That will be a closed vote, and then the ceremony will take place at the end of June in Brussels. And that's more or less the procedure. In terms of the prize and benefits, obviously, what we're expecting here from the main benefits of the award is obviously increased visibility for that city or the cities that are the winning city, and then the honorable mentions with positive media coverage, recognition not only from DG Trade, the European Commission, but also other sustainability-related organizations here in the EU. And that visibility can then be used, obviously, by the city in terms of their outreach with partners, with investors, with whomever, in terms of how they're making a contribution towards sustainability, insofar as also other types of activities, whether it be demonstrating their progress or their contributions towards things as the Sustainable Development Goals, for example. Then there will be support from us, from ITC, and also from DG Trade in terms of producing different types of public materials that you as a city can use on your city website when you have different conferences or regional or national events to actually publicize the fact that that you are the winner or an honorable mention of this award. So we would be working in cooperation with you to develop those. Then the idea here is that this is not just a kind of once-off isolated award event that takes place in June, but rather part of a longer, a longer, let's say, partnership between us, DG Trade, and a growing community of EU cities for fair and ethical trade. So really to really develop a network amongst the winners, meaning the winning city plus the special mentions, to share best practices, to participate in various public fora on sustainability in cooperation with us and DG Trade. And then last but not least, the prize or benefit is also a implementable project with us, with ITC in the field, meaning in a developing country, working with a city in a developing country that we would receive financial support from DG Trade up to 100,000 euros, which would be then implemented in the field. So it's a project budget that can essentially be implemented in conjunction with ITC and the winning city in a developing country context. And insofar as you would have ideas for what that project could be or what city would be interesting in your view, then that also can be articulated in your application in terms of what kind of project you would, if you had the budget, that you would implement. So these are also ideas that we would welcome. This is the award website. Basically, what we'll do now is we'll shift to a brief, my colleague Madison will do a brief demo of the website, not a demo, but just to show you how the website works. But just to say here before we wrap up with our presentation, all the information that I discussed today is found on this website. All the data, the rules of contest, the living book, all the information that you would need would be provided on the website, as well as the link to the application form. So please do consult this page on a regular basis in order for you to be able to follow the latest information. I don't know if you, I think more or less that is the last that we have for the presentation today. Before we open up to questions, what I'll do is I'll just let my colleague Madison go online for a brief second to show you how the website functions, and then we'll open it up to Q&A.
Yes, thank you, Joe. So just briefly, we would like to show you the award website and where you can access the various documents that we were discussing. So if we go to tradecityaward.eu, here you can see our homepage, which has a description of the award, of all of our all of the benefits of the award and what the award recognizes. So then if you follow this page to the Apply Now button, you'll then get taken to the Apply Now page of the website. This page contains a description of the application process, and it also contains downloadable forms that are necessary in order to fill out the application. So here you can find the overall rules of contest. This gives a background to the award, a description of the overall award process, and it also contains annexes, which include the mayoral declaration, which upon completing the application process online, you'll need to get a signature of the award declaration and then scan it and then have it uploaded into the application portal. You can also see the living book here, which is a downloadable file, and that contains a plethora of examples to give a more concrete look at what we're talking about in terms of stakeholder engagement, in terms of city initiatives, in terms of policy and overarching ideas. And then we also have our data protection policy. So if you go up to the online application portal, it will take you to our application portal here. You select Apply Now, which is in the corner. And then you log in with your respective email.
Want to look at the apps? Yes.
And this takes you to your dashboard in which you create a profile and a password saying which organization you represent and which city you represent. And then you go to apply now. And you'll begin the application process. So from here, you select submit abstract. And then one by one, you go through filling out the name of the city and through giving a descriptive summary. And then questions 1 through 8. And each of these sections of each question has a word limit in order to keep the application succinct and at a manageable level in terms of evaluation and review. So at this point, I think we are ready to open the floor up to questions.
Actually, just before we do that, I mean, I think we have just a few more. I think we're just a little bit ahead of schedule. So I don't know, Fabio, if we can go open to questions directly right now of those participants, or if you had anything you wanted to add based on my presentation before we do the Q&A, then that's fine. Otherwise, we can go right to Q&A.
No, I think there are already some questions, so we can start addressing the questions and see where the discussion takes us from there.
Very good. Okay, so then let's
Thanks.
Go to the questions.
Okay, so then in terms of the questions, if you could please state your name and which city you represent, organization you represent, and then we would be happy to answer the questions one by one. It seems if you scroll up, we already have a little bit.
We already have 6. I see.
Okay. So we have city of Bonn, Cologne. We have Denmark, city in Denmark. Ghent, Saarbrücken. Yeah, so I think some of the questions have been answered by the moderator already. So I think Cologne asked the question in terms of, is there a ceiling of the number of inhabitants? No, there was no top ceiling. Just a minimum threshold of 20,000, as I mentioned during the presentation. I'm just going through here.
And then in the Q&A section, there are some questions. Is the best external cooperation twinning between EU cities and cities in the south?
Yes, so that's a good question. So the twinning idea is definitely something interesting that would be considered during the evaluation process of the application. So a twinning where a EU city is twinning with a city in the developing world would definitely be looked favorably upon. Would be great when you discuss that twinning to provide as much information as the context of the twinning, what types of activities are taking place under that type of twinning arrangement, exchanges, best practices, case studies that have been accomplished, or future plans that have been that are in process, or any type of information that you could elaborate with the twinning would be highly valued. So basically, are cities in the EU, cities in the UK allowed to apply given Brexit? So the answer to that is yes. Cities in the UK are allowed to apply. However, this is Fabio, where maybe if there's any clarification you can provide. My understanding is that for the winning city, the country has to be a member of the EU at the winning city during the period of the city being the Fair and Ethical Trade City of 2019, of the duration of that award. Is that the understanding, Fabio, or do you want to provide some clarification?
No, it's correct. As a matter of fact, yes, UK cities can apply because they are members of the EU and for the whole application period. The problem is that given the whole uncertainty around the Brexit process, we inserted in the rules of context a clause saying basically what Joe just explained. So a city must be part of the EU for the whole period in which it will carry the title or winner of a special mention. And this is related to the fact that, of course, this is an award that is linked to our trade policy, and it's an EU trade policy. Unfortunately, of course, we would definitely welcome applications from the UK, but we had to include this clause for reasons that are a bit, let's say, above our grade. So there is a lot of uncertainty. I mean, in the hypothetical case in which UK stays in the EU, there's a reversal of the process. Then of course they could win and enjoy the benefits. Otherwise, that would not be possible.
Okay, and so there's another question here. Will there, let's see, is it possible for cross-border city networks to apply as a city network? So here, this gets back to the kind of the criteria, the rules for entry. So in the case, I mean, it's not a very applicable case because it's Switzerland, which is not part of the EU. But let's say that, for example, in Switzerland, there's obviously a very between Geneva and other French cities just across the border, or Basel, for example, and French cities just across the Swiss border from Basel. It's obviously a large metropolitan area. There are obviously a lot of cross-border networks between these two countries because they share a metropolitan area that just happens to be split by an international border. In this case, that a cross-border network would not be eligible. So only, for example, in the case of, let's say, in the case of Geneva, for example, you know, it would only be the French city on the other side of the border, or the Ville de Genève, that would, if Switzerland was in the EU, that would be allowed to apply. So we would not allow a joint application between a city in country A and a city in country B, even if they shared a strong cross-border. So that it would have to be really the city, the city itself, that city municipality, even though they may be quite strongly linked with a city just across the border. The other question here, I'm reading here, the last, who will develop the developmental project in case of being, let's see, in case of being the winning city?
But Joe, maybe we could say that of course what you say is correct. Only single cities can apply. But if there are, let's say, cooperation programs between cities on sustainable trade, for an ethical trade, that will be taken into account for the application. That would be positive points for the application. I mean, also the development of networks within the EU to trade with external partners. That would definitely be something to include in the applications that we looked at.
That's correct. That's correct. Yeah, but yeah, exactly. I mean, any type of networks that you're developing as a city is fine, but in terms of the application, it has to be one city only that applies, not a joint application. Maybe I misunderstood the question. So this other question here: who will develop the developmental project in case of being the winning city? Would the city be able to include its partners? Would the partners only be the winning city and one city from the global south, or more other EU cities, etc.? Also NGOs. So I mean, very good question. And so the answer is really at this point it's an open possibility in terms of the project. I mean, we're only really limited, if you will, by the budget that we have from the project basis. However, there were other cities that wanted to partner, or there were NGOs that were involved. I mean, we would be open to collaborating. So again, I think that what my recommendation would be to the applicant city is that if you have ideas in terms of NGOs to involve, or candidate cities in the global south, or other even EU cities that you're already in contact with in your network, that you would be interested in engaging with in this project, please articulate that in the application, because that would be obviously quite interesting to us. And we haven't really closed any doors per se on the scope or nature of the development project, or indeed the kind of partnerships that can be, or consortia that can be developed in that initiative. So another question here is, I'll read out, do you expect only trade/procurement aspects with the application, or should we also focus on a wider sustainability approach, mentioning, for example, our sustainability strategy and other development cooperation activities? Indeed, we're looking at both. We're looking at, a specific, let's say, a specific type of strategy or plan that's in place, hence the procurement, public procurement, but also we're looking at the wider context, as I mentioned. So indeed, I think the two are very important. So a forward-looking strategy is very important to articulate. Any existing cooperation activities that you're engaged in are also key to mention and reference in your application. So please do that as well. And for more of the information that we're kind of looking at, I would consult not only the rules of contest, but more importantly, probably in this case, the living book. So are you reaching out to ICLE to get local authorities to engage in the award? So ICLE is one of our core, let's say, partners in this project. They were part of our technical working group that helped us to develop the overall award, let's say, scope, criteria, process. It helped us develop the living book. So they were very much involved in the development of this award in 2017. So we're also reaching out through our various partners to really, including ICLE, to really engage and spread the word about the award. Any other questions or clarifications? Okay. So where's the question?
It's on the colors for all panels.
Okay, so yeah.
So at this point, it looks like we had some technical difficulties when we were displaying the application process online. So I'm just going to go through that again quickly. So if you can see my screen now, where I started off was on the trade-city-award.eu homepage. And from here, you follow the Apply Now button.
Can everyone, sorry, before we move forward, can everyone see that the website? Make sure that it's working. I mean, it's on your screen. It's okay.
Yes, okay.
Great.
So from the home page, you direct to the Apply Now page. And then this page is kind of, it's the base for the application. There's a description of the application period, which is, as we mentioned before, the 7th of December until 13th of April. And on this side here, you have the necessary documents and downloadable form for filling out the online application form online. So first we have the rules of contest, which gives an overall background of the award, and then also describes some of the requirements that we went over in the presentation earlier. It also contains an annex in the back that has a copy of the mayoral declaration. So this declaration will need to be filled out and signed by the, as you mentioned, representative body or person of the city. and then uploaded onto the last page of the award application portal, which I'll show you later. We also have the living book here, which this document contains a plethora of examples from outside the EU of cities that have done, whether it is policy, they've published certain policies, or they've done certain concrete actions to demonstrate their commitment to fair and ethical trade. That would be a good book to review in order to understand concretely what we are asking for when we're reviewing these, when the evaluation committee and when the jury are reviewing these applications. And then finally, we have our data protection policy for filling out the online application portal. So then from there, you would go to online application portal, and you come to the landing page here. From there, you select the Apply Now button and log in. If you haven't already logged in, you'll have to create a profile where you'll put your name and you'll put your city that you represent. And then once you do that, you select Apply Now again, and you're at the beginning of the application portal. So from here, you go to Submit Abstract. And page by page, you will go through the application. So here you would insert name of city, and then along with an executive summary describing why, kind of a short summary of why your city deserves to be this award and what they'll do to carry this award forward and be a champion of fair and ethical trade. And then from here, you'll have various questions. The first page is context to give the basic characteristics of your city. And then section 1 with questions on the leadership, vision, and strategy. And then for each of these questions, we've given some examples of evidence that you can put forward, as well as website links for you to attach certain websites to show. For instance, if your city has produced a website page on the city's commitment to fair and ethical or sustainable public procurement, you can attach that URL here, and then also several upload forms for you to upload further evidence of your city's efforts in fair and ethical trade. And then from here, you'll go through the rest of the questions in a similar fashion. Enabling environments, observable characteristics. And finally, you'll get to the last 2 questions. How would winning the award support your city's efforts in promoting fair and ethical trade? And question 7, if you were to win the award, what project initiative would you consider undertaking and why? So these are very important in the city's application as well, in understanding which cities would have the most innovative ideas going forward once they win the award. And then here you can see asterisk that they're the upload form for the mayoral declaration. And once all of that is complete, you finally save and submit your application. So do we have any more questions on that in particular? Okay, we'll stop screen sharing now.
Okay.
Okay, we have a few more Q&As here.
Right. Just to okay, so I'm starting here now in as they came in. Just to clarify, the focus is on fair and ethical trade with developing countries. Public procurement policies with sustainable products produced, let's say, in Germany, won't have such a big effect. Indeed, the focus of the award is with external countries outside of the EU. So insofar as your sustainable trade or sustainable public procurement policies are 100% EU centric, it would not be as, let's say, it would not count as much, if you will, as if it was from a developing country perspective. However, I would still, I would still mention that, because obviously if there are certain opportunities to then engage or trade or purchase from a developing country exporter, that would be quite important. Or if you recognize, for example, certain voluntary or private standards, whether it's a textile standard or a forestry standard or whatever the case may be, that obviously may have a developmental impact by and large. Even if you're buying from a European provider or European seller, they may in fact, depending on the supply chain, be actually buying from a developing country exporter, because some of these labels don't apply to European production. They only apply to production in a developing country context. So I would still mention it, because depending on the situation, it could have an effect on your application. Next question is regarding the development project. Who will carry out the project? DG Trade or ITC? Is it 100% funding? Running time of the project. So in terms of the development project, it would be a jointly well, ITC and the city would be implementing it. DG Trade would have oversight, project oversight. The funds would come from DG Trade to ITC, and then those funds, the €100,000, would then be 100% utilized for the implementation of the project. So what does that mean? That means that any type of local costs, the travel costs, for example, consultancy type costs that are incurred, would be then covered under that budget. We're expecting that from the city perspective, they would have their staff would be detailed, if you will, toward the implementation of the project. But the travel costs and all types of all the types of travel costs or lodging or any type of activities, trainings that we do in the field, for example, with the city, would be covered under that budget. The running time of the project would probably be around a year, or because we want to then obviously have the lessons learned from that project feed into the next round of the city award for 2020. But then again, that is to be decided. But I would say we would start planning the project in Q3 of this year. So after the summertime, we would start the planning, with implementation probably starting Q1 of 2019, with the end date of more or less the end of 2019, so we can take stock lessons and have lessons learned, so that it flows into the process for 2020. Reading the question, can only English websites be added as evidence on a local level? Mostly respective language is used to communicate with citizens. So, the official, let's say, recommendation is that obviously the application be submitted in English. But if you're providing like web links that are only in a local or national language, please do provide those links, and then perhaps a description in English as to what the links entail and what type of evidence the links are actually providing. And then based on that, we would have our colleagues in the evaluation process translate the web pages that you provide. But I would provide as much information, much background information as to the nature of the link, the nature of the evidence, and why it's important to the application. And then we would have a native speaker do the translation as well as a verification.
If I can add to what Joe just said, of course, the evidence provided in languages other than English will be valued the same way. I mean, there is a website in any EU official language that it will receive as many points as any other evidence submitted in English. We, let's say, suggest providing information in English is also because we, when translating, we can also misinterpret some of the information. So the work of the evaluation committee will be done in English. The work of the jury will be done in English. So if cities can submit their applications in English or submit parts of the evidence in English that will make the work of the evaluation committee much easier. But having said that, it will be all evidence and all material submitted in any of the EU official language will be treated exactly the same.
Any other questions? No other questions? Maybe one more, just leave it open for a few more seconds if there's any final questions. Okay, if that's the case, then I think we'll wrap up the webinar for this afternoon. Again, please do consult the website for any and all information on the award. So again, it's www.trade-city-award.eu. As my colleague Madison mentioned, all the information that is relevant is found there. There'll also be, I believe, we're recording this this webinar, so we'll edit a transcript and then also post that on the website. So if you want to hear any of the responses again, that can be shared as well with your colleagues. We do really hope that you apply. We welcome your applications. And also, any other further questions you might have, please do contact us through the website, and we'll be responding as quickly as we can. But thanks so much for all your attention, for all your questions. We really do appreciate it, and we look forward to receiving your application. Thanks everyone for your time. Have a great afternoon, and all the best. Thank you.
Thank you very much.